Hi, David Odell here with OdellCompleteConcrete. This is part 2 of a 7-part series. I actually, in the first part I said it was an 8-part. It's actually just a 7-part series. So right here, this is the morning of the pour, it looks to me like. We just put the dobies under there, yeah, and there's the concrete truck. Now this is the fiber mesh I was talking about in part 1 that I have on sale through my storefront, through the website, at $3.50 a pound. Here's the mix dropping into the pump. That's a 3,000 psi with the fiber I added and the pea gravel. Well, we got these number 3 rebars on 2 foot, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, but right around in that ballpark. That's some of the water from the primer of the hose. They shoot a lot of water down the hose just to lube it up so it doesn't get jammed up. Those bars on an angle there, I always put those on the protruding corners because concrete likes to crack off of those corners, so I put a couple angle bars there, help hold it together. Now we've got a heck of a swell coming through here off the top of it. That's that board there, that overhead screed. That's the actual flow line because the neighbor's property is a good I think about 3 inches higher. So it's got it's a gentle slope from this side, but from the other side it's quite abrupt. It's not a major walking path, so it's not a big deal. But it has to be in there just to get the water out of both of these backyards. This mix, I have to say, is a little bit wetter than I typically like it. But that's the way it came from the plant, so it wasn't wet enough to turn back, but you know, it was borderline really. Now at the bottom back of sidewalk there, I have a 1/2 inch expansion foam there. And I attached that foam just with some 3M adhesive spray glue. Now I've got the new aluminum rods here. I've got a 12-footer and a 10-footer. And they've been coming in really handy. Here's that valley. He's running the bull float down the valley just to try to hold it so it doesn't slough off in there. But what I'll do is I'll double check it when it gets a little tighter. I'll run it on the 6-foot red stick Milwaukee level through there just to make sure that it's staying where I put it. And that's a 4-foot wood bow float that he's using there. You can use magnesium, you can use fiberglass. They have a variety of different bow floats that they make for this. You notice he's bull floating this one direction, just he's pulling it up because he doesn't want the concrete pushed into that valley there. Now when he's bull floating, what he's looking for is any holes that the bull float will show as it goes over. And if there is some major holes and you can't move it around to fill them, you have to sprinkle back on them. A lot of times you can drag it from here and there to fill in some voids and make it flat. Sometimes you just got to start throwing some back in there with a shovel. So you can see him sprinkling back the concrete with the shovel here and there in a couple low spots. Now we had just enough concrete with the first load to get the driveway, and we got half of that parkway. So we're going to get another 2, maybe 3 yards, a cleanup load, and then we'll pump the rest of the parkway and the footing. So throughout this job site, we're going to actually go with 4 separate loads of concrete to complete it. So we got a load and a cleanup on this first pour, and then we'll have a load and a cleanup on the second pour. As far as the control joints go, the weakened plane joints, we're going to put those in with a saw cut the day after the pour. We'll saw cut those in with a skill saw, 7 1/4 diamond blade, and we'll go about 3/4 to 1 inch deep. And we'll try to keep all the sections around 100 square foot max, maybe 120, stretching it. We're going to put a couple control joints while the concrete's wet, and that's because it may crack at those points overnight before we have a chance to saw cut. So a prime candidate for that crack location is in between these 2 properties from corner to corner. So we just throw in the string line out there to start with, and then we're going to snap it across and then follow that line with the joiner, walking joiner. Looks like our second load has just arrived there. The unusual thing about this particular pour on this job site, which hasn't happened to me in quite a while, but it's probably been 20 or 30 years since it happened to me last time, but we actually got a whole nother load, the same exact order as the first load after we got this poured down. 2 more trucks showed up after we had poured this down. The exact order, it was a duplicate order. This error on the concrete plants side of it. Beauty of that is if you did run short, you have backup. This is Big Blue. It's a nice heavy Fresno. It really lays it down flat. No chatters and few lines. So that's a pretty deep valley there, but we were able to get it to snap through. So this particular cutter is 3 foot long and it's about 2.5 inches deep. So a lot of times you're going to be bouncing off the rebar. But your final joiner only goes 3/4 of an inch, maybe 1/2 inch. It really doesn't matter how deep the next joiner goes because it's still going to crack there, because you've separated the aggregate so deep there that it's going to crack there no matter what. Now on those lids for those meter boxes, I just took the removable top off, and then I put a trash grocery bag around each of them, and then I put them back on there. That way they're clean, they stay clean. So the second load's down, and we're getting ready to first course that block in the rear there. And that footing that we put in will be at least 4 inches lower than the top of slab that's going to be going on that front porch. That way, when we go to pour the slab or put some grass or something like that, we won't have to deal with the concrete footing being in the way, which I run into so often. It's one of my pet peeves. I love footings lower than higher. So I got down into this valley thing, and it was way off once I got in there. Fortunately, I got the 6-foot Milwaukee red stick level. Also makes a good rod. And I just kept cutting concrete out there until it got right. We took a good 5-gallon bucket of concrete out of here. But whenever you get into critical drainage areas like this, that's what you're going to want to do. Let it tighten it up and then cut it in. At this point, I'm thinking, wow, if I can just get it at least level, I'd be happy with that. Because when I initially jumped out here, it was actually running backwards. I said, wow, this is a lot of concrete. I don't want to hit dirt. I knew I wouldn't because I initially laid it out. Just what happened was the wetness of the concrete, everything slumped back into the valley because of the abrupt slope there. So I was going for level when I dug it in. And, if you get it perfectly level, the water's going to push out. That's hard to do. So this is the finished product right here, running the 50% nylon, 50% horsehair broom over it. Basically all that's doing is giving a nice uniform non-slip finish. Some areas as I push the broom through is a little wet, so I'll end up, if I don't like it, what I'll do is I'll just run the funny trowel over spots here and there. If it seems a little too coarse, I'll hit it with the funny again and then re-broom it. So that happens quite often. You may get some wet spots here and there because concrete doesn't dry perfectly evenly. It doesn't really do anything perfectly uniform. but you have to just deal with it. That's my concrete pumper. That's Leo with Stable. He's out of Fullerton. Yeah, so that's me brooming it again after I retroweled it in a couple spots. And there's a nice little wet spot there in the middle that was the last part to go off. We don't really know why. For a while there we thought, well, maybe we got a broken service main under there, or a cracked one. Maybe that's why it's staying wet, but I just think it's one of those freak things of nature that it's unpredictability of concrete. So here it is after the saw cutting. We didn't get any of the saw cutting in there, but it's just a worm drive with a 7 1/4 diamond blade, straight edge riding on some kind of plastic for the guard so we're not scratching the concrete up. And as you can see, this was the telling of whether it drained or not when we actually hit it with the pressure washer after the saw cut, and all the water ran out of this valley. You can see a little bit of that fiber there. See those little balls? That's from the fiber balling up from the broom, but it all wears off. If you don't see the fiber, then it's probably not in there. Now on that foam expansion there, it actually has a tearaway, so you could remove a 1/2 inch of that, and you could fill that up with some deco seal or caulking if you wanted to seal joint there where it meets the sidewalk. We got lucky on those meters. They lined up with the property line and the saw cut, so we caught an edge of the meter on that saw cut too. Worked out real nice. Anyway, stay tuned for part 3, and have a good day.